Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Hugh Hefner. The man behind the mansion Hugh Hefner remains one of the most iconic and polarizing figures in American cultural history. Best known as the founder of Playboy, he built an empire that influenced publishing, entertainment, fashion, and the sexual revolution of the 20th century. Both celebrated and criticized, Hefner's legacy continues to draw discussion long after his passing. Early life and vision. Hugh Marston Hefner was born on April 9, 1926, in Chicago, Illinois, to a conservative, religious family. Despite that strict upbringing, young Hefner developed an early interest in writing, drawing, and popular culture. After serving in the U.S. Army during World War II, he studied psychology and creative writing at the University of Illinois, where his fascination with human behavior and lifestyle media took deeper shape. Hefner worked as a copywriter for Esquire before deciding to create a men's magazine of his own, one that mixed sophisticated journalism with bold, modern attitudes about sexuality. The birth of Playboy in 1953, Hefner launched the first issue of Playboy from his kitchen table. Using borrowed funds, he took a major gamble, one that paid off immediately. Featuring a previously unpublished nude photograph of Marilyn Monroe, the debut issue sold more than 50,000 copies. What set Playboy apart wasn't only its provocative imagery. Hefner elevated the magazine with essays, fiction, interviews, and cultural commentary from some of the world's greatest writers, including Ray Bradbury, Norman Mailer, and Margaret Atwood. The Playboy interview later became legendary for its candid conversations with figures such as Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, and John Lennon. The Playboy philosophy. Hefner promoted what he called the Playboy philosophy, a worldview emphasizing personal freedom, modern style, pleasure, open conversation, and progressive views on sexuality. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, this philosophy sparked social debate. To some, Hefner symbolized liberation and the breaking down of conservative norms. To others, he represented objectification and commercial exploitation of women. Regardless of opinion, his influence on discussions around sexuality, censorship, and personal liberty shaped the American cultural landscape. The Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles became a symbol of Hefner's glamorous lifestyle, complete with celebrity guests, famous parties, and the now iconic Playboy bunnies. It also served as a creative hub where artists, athletes, and thinkers crossed paths. For Hefner, the mansion was more than a home. It was the center of a brand that promoted fantasy, entertainment, and a distinctive sense of luxury. Media expansion and pop culture icon. Beyond the magazine, Hefner expanded Playboy into television, film, music, clubs, and merchandise. He became a recognizable pop culture figure, often appearing in documentaries, talk shows, and even reality TV through The Girls Next Door in the 2000s. His signature look, silk pajamas, a smoking jacket, and a pipe, became a symbol associated with indulgence and charm. Controversy and criticism. Throughout his career, critics challenged Hefner's portrayal of women and the power dynamics inside the Playboy enterprise. In later years, several former models and associates spoke out about their experiences, sparking ongoing debate about the true environment behind the brand's glamorous facade. While Hefner consistently defended his mission as one of empowerment and freedom, his legacy remains complex and multifaceted. Legacy. Hugh Hefner passed away on September 27, 2017, at the age of 91. Today, Playboy remains an internationally recognized name. Though the magazine and brand have evolved dramatically, Hefner's impact on media, sexuality, and pop culture is undeniable. To supporters, He was a pioneer who challenged censorship and conservative norms. To critics, he reinforced harmful cultural standards. To everyone, however, he was a figure who changed the landscape of American entertainment forever. Hugh Hefner. The man, the myth, and the cultural revolution. He sparked a cultural entrepreneur ahead of his time. When Hugh Hefner launched Playboy, he did so with a clear vision: to create a lifestyle magazine that celebrated sophistication, individuality, and sexual freedom. At a time when the U.S. was steeped in conservative values, his publication broke taboos and opened the door for open conversation about sexuality in mainstream media. Hefner was frequently described as a cultural entrepreneur, a man who understood not only what people wanted to see but what they were curious to talk about, whether one admired or disliked him. Hefner had an undeniable talent for tapping into the cultural energy of his era. Expanding an empire by the 1960s, Playboy had become a global powerhouse. At its peak, the magazine reached more than 7 million subscribers, becoming one of the highest circulating magazines in the world. Hefner grew the brand into a multifaceted empire that included Playboy clubs with iconic bunny-hosted experiences, television shows, such as Playboy's Penthouse and Playboy After Dark, licensed merchandise. From apparel to accessories, record labels and film productions, global editions that targeted international readers. Hefner saw Playboy as more than adult entertainment. He saw it as a cultural institution that blended lifestyle, journalism, and fantasy. The Playboy Mansion, a world of celebrities and mythology. Few homes became as legendary as the Playboy Mansion. From Hollywood stars to athletes, musicians, and powerful executives, the mansion became a gathering place for glamorous figures. Stories about its parties, both enchanting and controversial, became part of American folklore. Hefner maintained strict routines inside the mansion. He was known for editing the magazine late into the night, watching classic movies, and surrounding himself with artists and intellectuals as often as models and celebrities. For many, the mansion symbolized liberation, fun, and creativity. For critics, it represented excess and objectification. Either way, the property became a staple of pop culture. Hefner is a social advocate. Though many associate Hefner solely with sensuality and glamour, he was also a vocal advocate for several social causes. He supported civil rights, featuring interviews and stories with black leaders during a time of heavy segregation. LGBTQ+ rights, including early coverage of same-sex relationships in his magazine. Anti-censorship activism, often funding legal battles that defended freedom of expression. Hefner consistently framed himself as a First Amendment advocate, arguing that erotic expression deserved the same protection as any other form of art or speech. A complicated personal life. Hefner's personal relationships drew widespread attention. He married 3 times: Mildred Williams, 1949 to 1959, with whom he had his first 2 children; Kimberly Conrad, 1989 to 2010, with whom he had 2 sons; Crystal Harris, whom he married in 2012 and remained with until his death. Between marriages, Hefner dated numerous women, many of whom lived with him at the mansion. His romantic lifestyle was frequently televised and discussed, especially during the 2000s reality show, The Girls Next Door. Despite the glamorous image, Hefner often described himself as a romantic at heart, someone who valued companionship and emotional connection. Criticism, backlash, and re-evaluation. In later years, Hefner faced increasing criticism. Some former Playboy models and insiders accused the mansion environment of being controlling or toxic. Documentaries and investigative stories revisited the hidden side of the Playboy world, prompting debates about consent, power dynamics, and exploitation. Hefner's defenders argued that he offered opportunities, financial stability, and fame to many women, and that he championed their rights in an era that limited female expression. His critics held the opposite view, believing that Playboy reinforced harmful beauty standards and reduced women to commodities. This debate remains a major part of how Hefner is remembered today. Final years and passing. In his final years, Hefner lived a quieter life at the mansion, focusing on his family, writing editorials, and maintaining the cultural legacy of Playboy. He passed away on September 27, 2017, at age 91, due to natural causes. His death sparked worldwide reflection on his role in shaping modern media and culture. As expected, reactions were mixed, some praising his contributions to social freedom, others condemning what they saw as objectification and excess. Hugh Hefner's enduring legacy. Hugh Hefner's legacy is layered, complex, and impossible to reduce to a single narrative. He was a pioneer of lifestyle publishing, a pop culture icon recognizable worldwide, a champion of free speech and civil liberties, a controversial figure associated with debates on sexuality and gender. Today, Playboy continues to evolve, reimagining itself for new generations and new cultural values. Yet the brand's foundation, the image of the man in silk pajamas who reshaped the boundaries of media, remains unmistakable. Whether viewed as a visionary or a provocateur, Hugh Hefner undeniably left an imprint on the global cultural landscape that will be discussed for decades to come. Hugh Hefner, a deeper portrait of a cultural revolutionary, a publishing visionary with an eye for talent. One of the most overlooked aspects of Hugh Hefner's influence was his extraordinary editorial instinct. Beyond the photographs, Playboy became a sanctuary for notable writers, thinkers, and cultural commentators. Hefner believed that a men's lifestyle magazine could simultaneously entertain and intellectually stimulate readers. Under his leadership, Playboy published works and interviews from Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Haruki Murakami, Kurt Vonnegut, Hunter S. Thompson, Ian Fleming, Ray Bradbury, James Baldwin. The Playboy interview, in particular, became an institution. Bold, long-form, and candid, these interviews offered insights into the minds of major world figures. Many historians argue that some of the highest quality journalism of the 20th century appeared in Playboy. Building a lifestyle brand before the world knew the term. Long before the age of digital influencers, Hefner understood the power of branding, specifically lifestyle branding. He didn't just sell a magazine, he sold a worldview, one centered on sophistication, pleasure, curiosity, and style. The Playboy brand grew into nightclubs, featuring the world-famous Playboy Bunnies casinos, offering exclusive, high-end entertainment luxury products, from clothing to fragrances, events, including celebrity parties and cultural gatherings. At its height, the Playboy Club network spanned cities from Chicago and New York to London and Manila. The clubs were among the first establishments in America to hire black performers and allow interracial audiences, something many clubs of the era refused. The businessman behind the fantasy, Hefner, was often seen as a carefree figure in a smoking jacket, but behind the image was a meticulous, hard-working manager. He reviewed layouts, approved articles, planned photo spreads, and monitored every detail of the magazine's design. He was known for keeping late-night hours, working until dawn, and surrounding himself with a team of editors, artists, photographers, and models who helped bring his vision to life. Some noted traits of Hefner as a businessman: hands-on leadership, aesthetic precision, constant innovation, defiance of government censorship. Several times in the 1960s and 1970s, Playboy fought obscenity charges. Hefner often used these battles to bolster the magazine's role in defending free speech. Even critics acknowledged his willingness to challenge restrictive laws around expression. The Playboy Bunnies: empowerment or exploitation? Perhaps no aspect of Hefner's empire stirred more debate than the Playboy bunnies. The women who worked at the Playboy clubs wore the iconic corset-style outfits and were trained in etiquette, hospitality, and performance. Many became actresses, models, or businesswomen after their time in the clubs. Supporters argued that bunnies earned high wages for the era they worked in relatively protected environments. Many used the platform to later advance their careers. Critics, however, pointed to rigid rules, strict appearance standards, and the objectification inherent in the concept itself. Modern discussions about Hefner often hinge on whether he empowered women by giving them economic opportunity or limited them to specific, sexualized roles. Relationships, the mansion. In the Hefner mythology, Hefner's personal life was public, romantic, and often controversial. After his divorce from his first wife, he embraced a bachelor lifestyle that defined much of his public persona. The Playboy Mansion, with its grotto, screening room, animal habitats, and massive parties, became synonymous with glamour. The atmosphere was a blend of intellectual salons, celebrity gatherings, film screenings, and nightlife. Yet, former residents later revealed complex dynamics behind the scenes, describing strict rules, curfews, emotional pressures, rivalries among the women. Hefner always argued that he created a supportive environment, but decades later, as societal values shifted, more critical narratives began to emerge. Philanthropy and activism. One of the lesser-known sides of Hefner was his philanthropy. He donated millions to causes that included the restoration of the Hollywood sign, First Amendment rights, sexual health research, animal rescue organizations, film preservation. Many museum and archival projects, especially in Los Angeles, exist because of his contributions. Hefner in film and media. Hugh Hefner's image permeated modern media. Over the years, he appeared in documentaries, biopics, talk shows, cameos in films and series, reality TV, especially The Girls Next Door. His persona, smart, suave, casually luxurious, became an instantly recognizable part of American pop culture. A polarizing legacy. Hefner's legacy today is one of duality and debate, admired for challenging censorship, promoting sexual openness, supporting civil rights, publishing high-caliber journalism, creating one of the world's most famous brands, criticized for promoting narrow beauty standards, reinforcing gender inequality, commercializing sexuality. The reported internal culture of the mansion. This duality is central to how historians discuss him. Final reflections. A figure who changed the conversation. Love him or condemn him, Hugh Hefner changed how society discussed sex, lifestyle, leisure, and freedom. He did not simply follow cultural shifts, he helped create them. Hefner's life was a blend of innovation, contradiction, glamour, hedonism, intellect, controversy, business genius, and cultural transformation. Few media figures have left such an extensive, complex imprint. Even now, years after his passing, debates about his impact reveal just how deeply he shaped modern culture. Hugh Hefner, the architect of a cultural empire, a childhood that shaped a rebel. Hugh Hefner's early life is a key to understanding his adult persona. Raised in a strict Methodist household, affection was limited and emotional expression was discouraged. Hefner often said that the lack of warmth in his childhood created a deep longing for connection and celebration of pleasure later in life. He grew up drawing cartoons, performing in school plays, and escaping into fantasy worlds, seeds of the creative, escapist Playboy universe he would later build. His parents were academically accomplished, and although they disapproved of Playboy, They financially supported his first business efforts, demonstrating an underlying belief in their son's ambition. Hefner the storyteller. While most people think of Hefner as a publisher or businessman, he saw himself first as a storyteller, someone who used media to express freedom, individuality, humor, and desire. He loved comic strips, jazz music, romantic films, and literature. These tastes shaped the aesthetic DNA of Playboy: soft lighting, elegant photography, sophisticated, aspirational interiors, clever, stylish humor, fantasy blended with real journalism. He wasn't just publishing pictures, he was curating a lifestyle. The philosophy behind the Playboy persona. Hefner's worldview wasn't invented overnight. It emerged from a belief that modern men should embrace pleasure without guilt. This philosophy challenged mid-century American norms, which expected men to be stoic, married young, and sexually reserved. The Playboy philosophy celebrated enjoyment of good food, fashion, and music, emotional openness, freedom from religious sexual repression, casual relationships, personal autonomy. In the 1950s and 1960s, this was considered revolutionary, outrageous, and liberating, depending on one's perspective. The bunny as a symbol. The Playboy bunny became one of the most recognized icons in the world. This costume, designed by Zelda Wynn Valdez and refined by the Playboy team, was the first commercial uniform ever trademarked in the United States. Its symbolism evolved over time. In the 1960s, it represented glamour and female mystique. In the 1970s, it became a symbol of growing fame and opportunity. In later decades, critics saw it as emblematic of objectification. But the bunny image never faded. In fact, it has been re-adopted by modern fashion designers and pop culture figures, showing its enduring power. Hefner in Hollywood. Hugh Hefner had a deep love for cinema. He saw film not just as entertainment but as an art form worth preserving. Through the Playboy Foundation, he funded preservation of early Hollywood films, restoration of damaged movie reels, archival projects for silent-era cinema in Hollywood circles. He was respected as one of the biggest private contributors to film preservation in the world. He also used the mansion's screening room to show classic movies nightly, a tradition that continued until his final years. The Playmate system. One of the central features of Playboy was the Playmate of the Month, a model featured alongside a personal profile. Contrary to stereotypes, many Playmates later pursued careers in acting, television, business, writing, fitness, hospitality. Hefner maintained lifelong friendships with some Playmates and often supported their careers. Others, however, later described restrictive pressures or uncomfortable experiences, reflecting the complicated dynamics of beauty, power, and fame. The Hefner feminist debate. For decades, Hefner was a central figure in the conversation surrounding feminism and sexuality. Supporters said he championed women's reproductive rights. He fought for abortion legality and contraception access. He hired female photographers, editors, and writers. He encouraged women to pursue careers in entertainment and journalism. Critics countered, his empire commodified female bodies. Standards of beauty were extremely narrow. The environment promoted male fantasy above female agency. This debate remains unresolved and continues in documentaries, academic studies, and cultural criticism today. Hugh Hefner, A Life of Reinvention, Controversy, and Cultural Transformation. The psychology behind the persona. To understand Hugh Hefner is to understand the paradox of a man who built a world of glamour while living a life of emotional structure. Psychologists, biographers, and cultural scholars have frequently analyzed his personality, often pointing to key traits. 1. The romantic idealist. Despite his image as a playboy, Hefner considered himself a deeply romantic person. He often said he believed in love, loyalty, and emotional connection, an irony that fascinated fans and critics alike. He once remarked, "The major civilizing force in the world is love." Women who knew him often said he was gentle, sentimental, and quick to form attachments, sometimes too quickly. 2. The escapist. Much of Hefner's world, from the magazine to the mansion, was built on the idea of escape. He wanted to create a place where people could step outside the constraints of society, where fantasy and reality blended. His lifelong habit of late-night movie screenings, pajama wearing, and nocturnal work patterns all reflected a desire to create his own private world, governed by his rules, not society's. 3. The controller. Despite his laid-back persona, Hefner exercised tight control over his environment, from editorial content to mansion rules to photo aesthetics. The controlled atmosphere of the mansion, with its routines and expectations, mirrored that desire for structure. 4. The visionary. Hefner's ability to anticipate cultural shifts set him apart. He sensed that the post-war generation was ready for more openness, less shame, more sophistication, more glamour, more liberation. He gave them a product that embodied all of this, and the world responded. The evolution of Playboy through the decades. The 1950s, a bold beginning. Playboy launched at a time when America's moral code was strict. Hefner's magazine shocked conservative culture, but intrigued younger men seeking modernity. Its early years established its identity. Jazz music, intellectual essays, stylish interiors, Marilyn Monroe's iconic centerfold, fiction by major writers. It was a cultural statement. Men could be both sensual and sophisticated. The 1960s, a cultural movement in the era of civil rights and counterculture. Playboy exploded in popularity. Hefner became a renegade celebrity who challenged censorship laws and hosted integrated TV shows and club lineups. The Playboy clubs symbolized the new American nightlife, glamorous, international, and modern. The 1970s, peak power. This decade was Hefner's golden age. The magazine reached record circulation. The mansion hosted legendary events. Celebrities and athletes viewed Hefner as both a friend and cultural gatekeeper. Feminists protested Playboy, while young men idolized it. Controversy, not just glamour, fueled its fame. The 1980s, challenges and reinvention as new competitors emerged and society's conversation about sexuality shifted. Playboy experienced business challenges. Video entertainment and new magazines altered the media landscape. Hefner responded by expanding Playboy TV, deepening the brand's international reach, hosting philanthropic and cultural events. In 1986, he suffered a minor stroke, which forced him to reduce public activity and reassess the brand's future. The 1990s to 2000s, pop culture renaissance. Younger audiences rediscovered Hefner through reality TV, The Girls Next Door, movies referencing the mansion, celebrity appearances, nostalgia for mid-century aesthetics. By this time, Hefner had become less of a rebel and more of a pop culture elder statesman. The 2010s, digital era decline as online content became widely accessible. Print magazines struggled. Playboy underwent multiple redesigns, including a temporary removal of nudity, which reflected changing cultural tastes. Though Hefner remained an icon, the company had to reinvent itself for a new generation, one less interested in pin-ups and more focused on lifestyle, social commentary, and inclusivity. Inside the Playboy mansion, myth versus reality. A cultural landmark. The mansion became a global symbol, a fantasy space where rules seemed suspended. Movies, comedians, and musicians referenced it so often that it became a shorthand for excess, glamour, and celebrity indulgence. Daily life. Despite rumors of constant partying, life inside the mansion was surprisingly structured. Movie nights, themed dinners, curfews for residents, scheduled events, professional staff, rules for guests and girlfriends. Visitors described it as both magical and heavily regulated, a world built for Hefner's comfort and routine. Stories from insiders: some former residents described warmth, safety, and friendship. Others later shared accounts of pressure, competition, and emotional strain. This dual narrative has kept the mansion's myth both fascinating and controversial. Hefner's impact on social issues: civil rights. Hefner was one of the first mainstream publishers to feature black writers, entertainers, and intellectuals prominently during the segregation era. His TV shows featured integrated casts when other networks refused. LGBTQ+ acceptance. Playboy featured positive coverage of same-sex relationships as early as the 1950s and 1960s, decades ahead of mainstream media. Reproductive rights. Hefner supported birth control access, abortion rights, women's sexual freedom. He donated to court cases and advocacy campaigns long before these topics were socially acceptable. Free speech. Hefner personally funded legal battles against censorship, seeing them as fundamental to American democracy. He famously said, "Without freedom of the press, there is no freedom." The empire. After Hefner. Following his death, Playboy continued to evolve. The mansion was sold and renovated. The magazine eventually ended regular print editions. The brand shifted toward fashion, art, and modern sexuality. Hefner's archives were preserved for historical research. His children took varied paths in business and humanitarian work. But the empire's future remains complex in a fast-changing culture. The enduring complexity of his legacy. Hugh Hefner's legacy is one of contradictions, a blend of liberation and controversy. Glamour and critique, rebellion and structure. Scholars, filmmakers, journalists, feminists, and cultural historians continue to debate his place in modern culture. He remains a pioneer of sexual openness, a savvy entrepreneur, a defender of civil liberties, a complicated figure in discussions of gender and power, a lasting icon of 20th-century American culture. Few figures from modern media provoke as much discussion, and that, perhaps, is the most telling sign of his influence.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.